Hello guys, and welcome to the Tonight Show with Eric Jalil. Today we are here with two very lovely ladies, Camille Duong and Sarah Whitley, and we will be talking about how citizens should react when they do not like a law or something, a policy that they disagree with. Camille here, she supports violent protests, and Sarah here is the latter. She is a peace activist. Thank you guys for joining us today. We are very lucky to have you, and let's get to the discussion.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Tonight I'll be asking Camille a question first. Camille, why do you think violence is a correct way to protest?
I believe that violence is the correct way to protest because it draws immediate attention to the issue at hand. For example, there have been a lot of instances in history where violent protests and riots have enact change instantly. For example, the Haymarket riot in Chicago, there were it was a labor protest, and so people were rioting and protesting for better labor conditions, so better working conditions, better pay, everything like that. So although there were bombs thrown and although lives were lost, they called immediate attention to the issue from the government and they improved the labor conditions.
Thank you. And Sarah, how would you react to this?
Violent protests do spark an immediate response from the government. If you punch someone in the face, of course they'll react immediately. But is that really a way to start a positive change? Violent protests lead to public damage, police involvement, and mass chaos to those. It uninvolves citizens. And who do you think has to deal with these new issues? The government. When they're so busy being haggled with all these new expenses of property damage, having to control these chaotic riots, they're too busy caught up in all this other stuff that they have more problems now than what your main issue was. They're not going to hear about what you're saying if you're damaging their stuff.
I understand what you're saying, Sarah, but I think issues are dragged on and you just wait and wait and wait and the spark kind of dies out from the whole issue. And I think the most effective way to enact change is to call attention immediately and respond immediately.
Now let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Sarah, if peaceful protests don't enact change, then what should people do?
There are plenty of ways for people who want things to change to be heard. It's not about react, it's about enact. Take role in your government. If you have a higher standing in politics, your voice will reach a much greater audience. People often think causing chaos and hectic behavior will catch the attention of those, but all they see is madness. It's hard to get a positive reaction out of something so negative.
So going back to Camille, what events in the past have been a successful attempt for violent protests to achieve a goal when it comes to government change or policy change, law change?
So, like I said about the Haymarket riot, but there have also been many other protests and riots that have occurred that enact change immediately. So, for example, there was one of the biggest riots in history, the Los Angeles riots. So this is basically when the Los Angeles Police Department, they beat up this kid named Rodney King. So once that happened, there were a bunch of violent protests and riots surrounding the topic of police brutality and equal rights for African Americans. So because of these violent protests, the city and the state government made a lot of changes to equality for African Americans and including minorities and a lot of separate issues. So they welcomed minorities into the force, and also the head chief of the LAPD resigned. So it just kind of showed that with the violent protests, it kind of works because the guy who was in charge, of the whole case with Rodney King resigned, and they welcomed more minorities into the force. And then afterwards, prejudice for African Americans decreased exponentially. This shows that violent protests do work and they do enact change immediately, because this is an issue that's been going on for how long? So this series of events led to immediate change within the government. It called immediate attention and it helped. This is a major step forward for change, not only just for Los Angeles, but it was a change for everybody across America.
That's very interesting, Camille. Now we'll move on to the next question. Sarah, what do you think about this issue?
As a peaceful activist, I've always found even in the toughest situations, there's always a peaceful and more positive way to change things. And just violence is such a quick and unthoughtful way. You just act immediately, and then in the end, even your actions, you might not realize the consequences. And a lot of people who just take violence as the immediate route never really think about their actions and what it actually does and how it really doesn't help the situation at all and only causes more problems.
Interesting. Now, Camille, I want you to evaluate when it is right for citizens to react in such a physical manner.
So personally, I believe it is suitable for a citizen to act in such a violent manner when it comes to lives. Like when lives are being threatened or when people are being killed, I think that change needs to happen immediately before the issue itself gets forgotten, when people don't really care about it anymore. Because, you know, once an issue happens, people care about it, people want things to happen, but when the issue gets dragged on, people forget about it, they lose passion for it. There's no time to wait. The citizens need to make a bold stand in order to make change happen. Referencing Nelson Mandela's speech, I Am Prepared to Die, he talks about how the citizens were being oppressed by the government, and this oppression has been going on for years and years and years, and nothing was happening. So they needed to make a bold stand, like I mentioned before, to make change happen. The citizens needed to call attention to the problem at hand because the government was ignoring it for so long.
Alright, here's some food for thought. How are the people in these riots and these chaotic gatherings any better than the oppressive government that they're fighting?
What happens if the government reacts in a violent way when it comes to these peaceful protests?
The likelihood of government meeting peaceful protests with force is very unlikely. If you're abiding by the laws and you're not harming anyone else's rights, the government has no reason to use any force on their citizens. Throughout history, violence and riots have been used, and although they were successful, this isn't the 1600s anymore. With social media and democracy, everyone has a platform to have their voices and opinions heard. The only thing stopping people from accomplishing anything through peace is themselves. As a whole, civilization has become more sophisticated and political. There is no need to react to problems like our previous ancestors have. Anyone has the ability to enact change through peace. Some might find it hard to believe. It might take more effort than to hold a sign and march around town. But if one is passionate and willing to put the energy forward to truly enact change, it is very possible.
So, going back to the topic of Nelson Mandela, how does he signify peace or violence?
As I mentioned before about Nelson Mandela in his speech, I Am Prepared to Die, the South African people were oppressed by the government for so long, and they wanted change, so they acted violently and in a physical manner in order to call attention from the government to the issue. I would say this is the first step to a revolution against that part of the government.
Nelson Mandela created his group Umkhonto just for peaceful negotiations with the apartheid government. His main goal as a member of the group was to create equal rights for the South African citizens. Although in Nelson Mandela's speeches he talks about violent protests and how towards the end that's all they could do, his main goal was to start peaceful protests and just basically be able to have this conversation and spark a change only through peace.
Alright guys, I want to thank you for joining us on The Tonight Show with Eric Jalil. Thank these two lovely ladies for joining us today, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon.
I thought it was The Tonight Show.
Show the people. Oh, you can't see her yet? Oh, look at her.
Oh god, I tricked.
Oh god. Hello guys, and welcome to The Tonight Show with Eric Jalil.
Maybe more exciting.
Alright, okay. Welcome to The Tonight Show with Eric Jalil. Alright, tonight we are here with two very lovely ladies, Camille Duong and Sarah Whitley. Guys, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Camille Duong.
I'm Sarah.
Yes, oh sorry, that was bad.
That's stupid.
Yeah. Camille and Sarah introduced you. Sarah.
As if it's too close, don't do it.
Yep. Beautiful. Get them
Can you stop? Can you stop? Did you really just try to use your foot? Nasty.
Just calm down. Let's go.
So going back to Camille.
Yep. This is my best friend.
I got nervous.
I know.
We're all seniors now.
No, we're not. We still have a final to turn in.
Even like hard problems that you feel like aren't gonna like end. There's always a better way. There's always like those.
Oh my god.
Those
What is
who
she
like,
doing?
Those who like
Alright guys, so right now we're taking a break on the set. You know, we're just chilling, we're getting ready, getting refreshed, taking a little drink break. This is Sarah, she's
Hey guys.
she's annoying. I know it was a fun time, you know. I love working with these people. We got the question.
We got a question?
Yeah,
Let's go!
Going back to Nelson Mandela, like Camille mentioned before, how does he started with peace? Starting his group.
So
I wasn't even. I had a serious face on.
Okay.
She's a goofball. That's a bloof ball. This is a blooper.
This is a blue ball. Okay. I still think
We could really make a blooper all about like Camille's noises.
Okay.
Squirtle. Honestly, I'll make like a little remix of.
We are gonna be.
You sound very depressed.
Yeah, I was about to say art interview is supposed to be like, okay, so now like we're
Look alive, look alive.
Oh my god.
Interesting. Okay.